Okay, hi everyone, it's Roger here. We are on the dot at 9 in the morning, London time, 24th of May, with the top 3 trends. And welcome to the call. We're going to have a whole bunch of people come and join us. We've got about 3,000 people that have registered. So if you are now watching, you most likely be watching via our live GeniusU feed, right? So let me start with a little instruction before we get into our top 3 trends. What you're going to do is I'm just going to share my screen here. Here is the screen, and this is what you'll be seeing right now. And what you'll see is kind of a little screen because I'm using a smaller computer right now. But what you'll see on here is you'll see that there are already people posting a lot on the side. So I can see Edwin is there. There's Shahzad there from Saudi Arabia. There's Gabriella, Brian, Warren. Hi guys, right, from all around the world here, UK, Australia. I'm going to ask you all to do something here because while you can post here, when we close all of this up, you won't necessarily get the easiest way to connect here. So I'm going to give you a new place that you can go to post your connections. So if you go to my Facebook page, which is here under Roger James Hamilton, or you just search for Roger James Hamilton and look for the verified one here, and you come to this post here, the top 3 trends, and I've even said at the top, if you're joining us live online, then go ahead, click like. So by just clicking like if I click like here, I can go look at all the likes and I can see all the people that are on the call. And then that way you can go follow anyone there. And if you see in the comments someone worth connecting with, this is as much about your connections as it is about your knowledge. So click a like so that you're on here, and then also post your comment down here. I put already my links to YouTube and to Twitter, but post a comment down here about what country you're from and also what kind of company you've got. And if you want to put your website link, you can go ahead and do that as well, either way. So you can see everyone is here posting at the moment. Hi, Charlotte. Hi, Stephen. Let me just have a look and see the comments here as well. So as you start commenting down here, I'll start to see them. So I can see Michelle's on from England. Michelle looks after all our partnerships. We've got Sandra on from Perth here as well. And we've got a lot of people now posting in as we go. And I'll be checking back on this as well. So as well as you posting on here, where you're from and your company, you can, as we go through this call, also just have a chat with each other because that makes it more fun, and use this for a way to chat with each other. And if you've got questions, I will do my best to get to some of those questions as we go as well. That is the plan, all right? So with that being said, let's now jump right into the top 3 trends. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through them one by one in a way that they build up to a bit of a story. I'm expecting everyone who's on the call has got a business of some sort, are between businesses or starting a business. And one of the biggest challenges is who to listen to. I'm sure you've got lots of experts, I know I do, telling me all the times what I should do. And the biggest challenge is if someone's telling you what works, it's already too late. It's like trying to surf a wave where there's someone else surfing it. So you're saying that must be a good wave because that person's surfing it. But the moment someone else is surfing it, it's already too late to surf. And we're now moving in these amazing, fast changing times where the waves are bigger and faster than ever. So I'm going to share with you a couple of slides just to get us started, which is going to kind of set the tone for what I'm going to go through. Here's my slides here. And the first slide is from 2006. So we're now talking 10 years ago. Saddam Hussein, believe it or not, Saddam Hussein was executed in 2006. Right? There was no news at this point about the fact that within a year there was going to be a global financial crisis. There was no news at this point about the fact that Apple was going to come out with the iPhone and that smartphones would be the #1 way we would access the internet. We were less than 1 year into YouTube having started. So no one was using YouTube unless you actually were there at the very, very beginning. Facebook hadn't even at this point yet made it available, made Facebook available. Mark Zuckerberg was still just using Facebook for some of the universities, and it was only in September 2006 that he actually opened it up for the rest of the world. So you wouldn't have been on Facebook 10 years ago. So we saw this massive shift in the last 10 years. And if you saw my little note on my Facebook page, you'll see the same thing happened in 1996, which was a year before the Asian crisis. That's when I came out to Asia, to Singapore. If you go back to 1986, it was 1 year before the Black Monday Wall Street crash that we've all heard about. So in every moment, it's like, you know, everything that's happening around us, whatever you're planning on, it's all about to change. Here's what would have happened in 2006 if you had listened to any of the business experts at that time, they would have said that the key to surfing the wave in your business is, number one, have a search optimized website. In fact, some of you still today, because there's still people teaching this, still think things like SEO are important. But think about it. When was the last time you really went and started buying products based on doing a Google search? And almost all of it now is via social media recommendations, or just going to Amazon Direct or going to eBay Direct and buying from there. So we don't do that anymore in the same way. But that was what everyone was saying back in 2006. And no one was using social media because it didn't exist. Collecting an email list. There's still people today teaching that, even though fewer and fewer people are actually opening emails. Not to say that email doesn't work, but it's not the number one way if you're looking to actually make a success in your business. Posting on a blog, this is something that, again, even today, some people are still doing. And in those days, 2006, Blogger was one of the biggest sites, as was WordPress. And then sell digital products, which again, there's still some people I see today trying to do these things. So this is what you would have actually had to do in 2006 to be successful. 2016, things have changed massively now. Why did I put up Donald Trump here? Because these are some of his tweets from the last 2 days. The American people are sick and tired of now not being able to lead normal lives and constantly be on the lookout for terror and terrorists. Well, here you would have thought we actually got the terrorists. Here, now we're talking about how can Crooked Hillary say she cares about women when she's silent on radical Islam? Crooked Hillary wants a radical 500% increase in Syrian refugees. We can't allow this. Now, of course, you could say, well, these are the rantings of a madman, but the truth is Donald Trump has just, in the polls, become equal to Hillary, and it's a neck and neck on the polls in America. So there are some pretty interesting things happening in the world where there is as much fear and there is much concern as there was 10 years ago, if not more. And we're still here building our businesses, and the world keeps on changing. So regardless of what happens in American politics, if you today were to listen to most of the experts, they would tell you it's not all about a search optimized website. It's about having a mobile site and apps. But I'm not going to tell you to do that today, because that's like me telling you in 2006 you should have a search optimized website. Number two, collecting an email list is now all about building an engaged community. But again, for the same reason, while I would have told you to do that a year or two ago, I'm not going to tell you on this call to do that for exactly the same reason. Post on a blog goes to share videos and content on social media. Many people telling people to do that now. It's all about videos. And again, within 10 years, that's going to be irrelevant. And sell digital products has moved to giving away content where you're then selling experiences, which even all of the most successful musicians are doing that, where they're charging more for their concerts and they're giving away their music free on YouTube, and then letting people share it freely so they can actually sell the experience instead. But again, I'm not going to tell you to do that right now, even though I have been sharing that that's what we've been doing the last couple of years for exactly the same reason, that everything's going to change within 10 years. So this call is all about the top 3 trends for this year, which are just like if I was to have told you back in 2016 you should have a mobile site and apps, you would have said, what are you talking about? Because there was no smartphones even out to actually browse a mobile site other than BlackBerry. If I told you to have an engaged community, you would have said how, because social media didn't exist. If I'd said go share videos content, you'd say, where would I share a video? Because YouTube was still only in its first couple of months. And if I'd said give away content, you would have said, well, why would I do that when I can actually sell it? So you would have actually ignored everything that someone who in 2006 would have said, this is what you need to do for the next 10 years. You would have ignored it because it wouldn't have made sense, because it's an entirely new wave and a new paradigm as well. So what about 2026? 2026 is the year before there is another major disruption, which will happen in 2027 is my guess. And again, I don't know why this happens on the 7th year of every decade. A lot of people will say 7 is an unlucky or a lucky number. Most people say it's a lucky number. But there's no question that, 7 into anything, 7 into any decade, there's certain things happening at that point where things start to get a little bit shaky. All of my tech friends at the moment are all moving away from just doing apps, and they're getting into virtual, they're getting into sensors, they're getting into location-based products and transaction-based products, which is why the likes of Uber or Airbnb are becoming so successful at the moment. However, at the same time, what we're seeing is this big shift in terms of the investments markets, where most of the people I know who are, if not all the people I know who already are investors, they have actually taken their money out of the markets. They are not investing as heavily as they were in tech companies, because they can see that things are more uncertain now than ever as well. And they're also moving out of the US dollar for some particular reasons, which I'll get into a little bit later. So I've crossed out all those things about mobile sites, engaged communities, sharing videos, giving away content, and I put a big question mark on there instead. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be sharing a little bit now on what's moving and what's changing around the world. And what I'd really like everyone to do is just think for a moment on this call. If you were to look back even 5 years from now, and you were to think back to this call, you think back about being on this call with me on Facebook within the same month or year was the month that we've actually launched virtual reality. You know, Oculus Rift came out in March, April. Same happened with HTC Vive. Same happened with Microsoft HoloLens. All of the different virtual reality and augmented reality apps have all just come out. And also things like live video has just gone live on Facebook. But that will all be irrelevant even 5 years from now. And what you'll do in 5 years when you look back at this is you'll hear me share certain things, because I've had the chance to be at the cutting edge working with people who are futurists and people who are looking every day at the future as entrepreneurs as well as scientists and as economists, and actually seeing, well, what is actually happening just around the corner that we should be actually looking at, and we should be actually taking action on ourselves as well. So I put a big question mark to say what's going to happen in 2026. By the end of this call, I'm going to show you exactly what I believe is going to happen. Don't take it from me, it's just one opinion, but you've got a chance from this call, by the time we get to the end, to have some very specific steps you can take, which is going to allow you to be able to really make the most of 2016 as well. Now, by the way, let me just share my page before I go back to my slides. Here is, at the moment, the current notes on my Facebook page. So you can see here, just since we started, if I just kind of refresh the page here, that we have now got on the notes here. Here we go. Oh, here we go. Okay. We've got like 112 people have liked it already. We've got some comments. Some of you shared it as well. Sharing is a good idea. If you share this, it means it's going to be on your page. You can come back and connect up with all the people that are on here a little bit later as well, which is good. I'll just change this to most recent comments. So we've got Liz here, who's in Australia. We've got Norbert here, who's from South Africa. Duncan's from Australia as well, which is great. We've got Cassandra, who is based in the UK, working around the EU. And I'll just open it up because we've got a whole bunch of comments on here as well. So hi guys, to everyone who's on here. We've got Prue, who's actually at iLab, which is actually right next door to me here. I'm on a hardline in Bali, and we've got all the guys next door. So hi guys. And then we also have got here Lena, who is in Bali as well, but up in Ubud, I believe, from Cape Town. Oh, different Lena. That's Lena Sky. And then we've got Jung Chun from Auckland. So all from different places. Portugal, Teresa. Hi guys. Okay, so if you hear anything that I say that you think I need to ask a question about that, you can go ahead and ask a question. I'll be happy to see if I can answer a number of them as we go through this as well. But let me now jump right into the lead up to the very first wave. Now, as you can see, I'm going through this at pace because I've only got an hour to go through all of this, and I want to try and get to some of the questions at the end as well. So here we go. Let me share my screen again, and we have got here, for those who just joined, you'll see that I was actually posting into the Facebook page on my Facebook wall. So if you missed what I said at the very beginning, go in there, leave a comment, click a like, share it if you want to have it on your wall so that you can actually come back to it later as well. And then that way you're going to be able to connect in with everyone else from around the world too. How much has things changed? In the last 10 years, Uber did not exist 10 years ago. Airbnb, no one was really using. Though now the world's largest taxi company, doesn't have any vehicles, largest accommodation provider, doesn't own any real estate. We've seen how fast Facebook and Instagram have grown. You know, now Netflix, which streams video, which wasn't even possible 10 years ago, is one of the largest, fastest growing television networks in the world. Alibaba, which did not exist in our minds 10 years ago because it had just started up in China, is now the most valuable and biggest retailer in the world. It's just overtaken Walmart in the last month. And all of these have actually shifted and changed in such a way that if you try and copy them, you're too late. They're riding a wave of crowdsourcing, and they're riding a wave of mobile apps, which is already crashing. It's still going to be around for a little bit, but it's not going to be the fastest growing companies in the next 5 years. This here is a graph from Gerd Leonard, who wrote a book called The Digital Transformation of Business and Society. And there's all these different elements in terms of trends where the future keeps on changing the language we speak, which means we have to relearn again the things that, we have to unlearn the things that we learn. The winning formulas become the losing formulas, and vice versa as well. And not only does this happen every 10 years, but we're actually seeing an acceleration of it happening as well. So if you've been to one of my fast forwards this year, you've seen me ask you this question. If you started with 1 grain of rice on the first square of a chessboard, doubled it on the second, and kept doubling on every square, how much rice would you have by the 64th square? So this is exponential growth. You've doubled, right? And this, by the way, the reason I'm asking you this question is it was a question that actually formed the basis of a story about the person in India who invented chess. And it's a story that many people in Silicon Valley are now sharing because they're using this analogy of the chessboard for where we are in the world today. And here's the story. The inventor of chess presented the game to the Emperor of India, who was so impressed, he offered the inventor any reward he wanted. The inventor asked for, oh, just give me a single grain of rice on the first square of my chessboard, 2 on the second, 4 on the third, and so on. The emperor was so amazed at the modesty of the inventor's request and thinking it can't be that much rice, he granted the gift. But he soon becomes enraged when the court treasurers report that by the 64th square, he would need to deliver, and if you're wondering, well, how big is this number? It's actually 18 billion grains of rice, or a heap larger than Mount Everest, and actually it's more than 1,000 times today's world annual production of rice. So obviously, the emperor's not very happy, doesn't have a very good sense of humor, and unfortunately the inventor loses his life as a result. But not before making the point that exponential growth rapidly leads to results we can hardly comprehend. Okay, so we kind of get that theory that if you keep doubling things, they get really big really quick. But what's most interesting is in Andrew McAfee. Andrew McAfee has become well known as a futurist, and he wrote a book called The Second Machine Age. And he talks about how the second half of the chessboard is when things get really crazy. He said that based on Moore's law, which is really when we actually saw this doubling start with computer power, where every 18 months since 1958 onwards, there's been this doubling. Well, in 2006, that's when we actually got into the second half of the chessboard. The first half, you don't really notice that much growth. And then suddenly, in 2006, everything transforms. And he says, for me, that really helps to understand why we're seeing smartphones and self-driving cars and automatic translation and powerful artificial intelligence and this amazing parade of technologies. I think of them as second half of the chessboard technologies. So there's this like really incredible shift of acceleration that's happening right now, where the waves are actually getting doubly as big every 18 months and doubly as fast every 18 months as well. So what I'm about to share with you are the top 3 trends. These are not the same 3 trends that I share at my events, but they include some of the things I talk about in my events as well. So you have an opportunity, if you actually go and look at the top link within the Facebook thread that I actually posted there, that there's this link here, Fast Forward Your Business. And if you happen to be in London, if you happen to be in South Africa, or if you happen to be in Australia, New Zealand, Japan this weekend, Thailand this year, you can go and just jump in and get yourself a ticket. And if you're not in any of those places, I definitely recommend you still go in, get yourself a ticket. I think they're like $29 or something, so they're not expensive, but it gives you virtual access to every time I do my 2-day program, and you get to connect with everyone during that as well. So if what you're hearing is something that makes you excited and makes you think, I need to actually have more of this information, just know this is not the end. This is like the beginning, and there's more you can do as well. So wave number 1. Wave number 1 for me is the easiest to miss because we are the wave. The wave number 1 is the new alchemists, which is the growth of entrepreneurship itself. There's something really incredible that is happening around the world right now, which you're part of and which I'm part of. I see it in things like how many people are liking my Facebook posts. I see it in how many people are watching YouTube videos today on entrepreneurship. You've seen it in the number of friends you've got who actually are out there right now becoming entrepreneurs, because it's more difficult to get a job today and it's easier than ever to start a business. So this is about a number of trends coming together. It's the fall of the industrial age. It's the rise of entrepreneurship. It's digitization, which means we can get access to any information at any time. Social media, which allows us to easily share successes and ability to get things going. Even things like online access, 3D printing, where we're now going from 3 billion up to 7 billion people online within the next 5 years, which is a huge increase. We're doubling the number of people online just because we are now getting access to the rest of the world that doesn't have it. And 3D printing, which allows us to actually produce anything anywhere. And these are all coming together in exponential growth. So what we're seeing is this wave is about how at the beginning of the year 2000, we had only around about 100 million people who were entrepreneurs. We now have over 400 million, and that's going to be up to over 1 billion by 2020. That's an enormous growth. If you go back to 1900, there wasn't even 1 billion jobs on the planet. So 100 years ago, there weren't even 1 billion jobs. Today, we already are on the pathway within the next 5 to 6 years of having more entrepreneurs creating their own jobs than people having to go out and look for their own 100 years ago. Now, we are still designed in such a way within our society that the government is focused at trying to create jobs. We're still designed in our education system that we're still taught at school that we've got to go out and look for a job. We're not taught how to be an entrepreneur. But what you're doing right now, which is self-education, is a critical thing that I personally believe with these 3 waves you're going to see means that it's really you and I have the responsibility to ensure that the education for our next generation, including our own generation, that it is modern and it is contemporary and it is going to solve the issues that we all have, which is that we're all moving into a world where 50% of the jobs won't even exist that exist today in the next 10 years. And the good news is there are many, many multimillionaires and billionaires, as you've seen from the stories I've been writing on Facebook, that are now sharing how they do what they did. That wasn't the case. If you go back 30 years, we didn't even know who the billionaires in the world were, because Forbes only just came out with the first billionaire list for global entrepreneurship in 1987. So we were a year away from even knowing who they were. But now, today, most of those entrepreneurs are actually not just giving their money away, they're giving their information away as well. This is the PayPal mafia. People like Elon Musk, who we all know, people like Steve Chen and Chad Hurley, who set up YouTube. These guys are all people who actually all got to know each other in PayPal, learned what it takes to scale a business up, and now they share that information. This is Peter Thiel. This is the book I recommend, 0 to 1. There's going to be many things I recommend in this core that you can actually use by coming back to this recording, and then actually take the different resources and use them, and really kind of like take piece by piece over the next couple of months. And this alone, I think, will be of real value to you if you haven't heard about these different resources before. So Peter Thiel has invested in many multi-billion-dollar businesses. He's actually created a series of them himself. He was really the first investor in Facebook, outside investor in Facebook. And he also has now the most valuable unicorn company outside of Uber, which is a company called Palantir, which was a spin-off from PayPal. And he wrote this book called 0 to 1, which is how do you go from 0 with no company to 1, which is your first product, your first customer. That's more difficult sometimes than actually getting your first customer, your first product, and then growing from there. So he talks about that within this book, and how he goes about also talking about 0 to 1 billion in the way that he asks these 7 questions. Here is another example. I'm part of Abundance 360, which is Peter Diamandis' organization. He was instrumental in setting up the X Prize and also Singularity University. And one of the people within his faculty, called Salim Ismail, wrote a book called Exponential Organizations. We've designed our GeniusU platform, and many of the things you see I do today off the principles you see here. 10 principles on how to create the right ideas, which I call value. Same as if you know wealth dynamics, there's a value multiplied by leverage. This is ideas multiplied by scale. And I won't go through the details of these other than tell you that you don't need to guess what are the ingredients of exponential growth. They all appear here in this book, and you can pick up the book very, very easily, very simply, and it's very accessible to understand it. And the third thing I'll say is that we obviously do this ourselves as well. There is a map of entrepreneurship today for the billion people coming online that simply did not exist 10 years ago. Because 10 years ago, there just weren't enough entrepreneurs to be able to share information and resources in the first place. And 10 years ago, like I mentioned, social media didn't even exist. So we have our wealth spectrum, we have our wealth dynamics profiling, which allows you to find out what's my natural path, what level I'm at. And we're living in a world of like information overload, right? You don't actually need more information because you actually got world's information in your pocket, right? So the most important thing today is not to be thinking, how do you go about getting more information? You know, don't keep on just going to more and more and more events or reading more and more books. It's not about the information, it's about the direction. You've got all the information in the world, but that's like having a map of Paris and not speaking French and never been to Paris before and being lost. Information doesn't help. Knowing every street name doesn't help. But if someone came to you and you look for direction, where you said, well, I just need to get to Eiffel Tower, then you'd start by saying, well, here's where I am. I'm at Charles de Gaulle. I'm going to Eiffel Tower. And straight away, they wouldn't bother with 99% of the map. They'd go straight away, forget about all the information. You just need to know if this is where you are and this is where you want to go. Here's 2 or 3 different ways you can get there. So everything that I share and everything that we do at Entrepreneurs Institute is all about how do you make sure that you are where you're at right now. You know, because some of you, you've actually got new startup ideas, right? Some of you are overloaded in your existing business where you've already got too much going. Some of you are working in a company and you're thinking, how do I even start a business? Some of you have multiple businesses and the issue isn't the money, the issue is your time. Wherever you are is a specific place where someone's already been there. And there's already, from that place, a very specific number of steps to get to where you want to go to. And the most important thing is to be able to get that direction in the right way. All right, so that's why everything we do is about creating the map, knowing where you're at, finding out where you are, and then moving with you. And the number one way we do that is through mentorship. So if you are someone who is in a business and you're already looking to grow, and you're saying, well, what's the smartest way to grow? I can tell you the smartest way is get yourself a mentor. So I have a series of different mentors. I travel out to America every single year for mentorship. This weekend, I will be going to Japan and then to Hong Kong, which is where there is a whole group of the tech entrepreneurs and venture capital firms from China who are going to be meeting up. And there's no question I'll be getting mentorship in those groups that I actually join up with at Rise Hong Kong, which is part of the Web Summit series. So wherever I go, I'm looking for that mentorship. I'm saying the number one thing you can do for yourself is to look for that mentorship as well. One thing I will say before I continue with this first wave, by the way, is I will also, I'm just going to come to the, oh my gosh, that's a lot of comments here. All right, what I'm looking at here, I just looked at the webinar list here. So just for everyone who's been writing comments here, by the way, here, let me just show you what I'm seeing. I'm seeing here all of these comments which are being posted on this one here. You can see many different people being posted. Zoe said hello from Indonesia. Raz said hello from Malaysia. Stephen said hello from Zimbabwe. And these are all just coming in right now. So many people are just joining the call at the moment as well. So one thing that I did share is that on my Facebook page, we're all posting on here so you can actually keep this for afterwards. I know many of you have been doing that, so this has been updated the whole time. But what I've actually done is I've also given you a link which is a link directly with the link you're on here. While you're posting on this one, where you're watching the video, you'll notice if you scroll down below the video, that in here, I talk about the mentorship that I do. Now, I have got two things that I do. I have Entrepreneur Mastermind, which is about 500 people where we meet every single month. And I have Crystal Circle, which is a high level, where I have 150 people. So I'm pretty much full on that one. So we're not looking to bring more people on. But we have like a wait list and an application process for that as well. And this tells you why I do that to help entrepreneurs around the world. So if you like the idea, as you're going through this call, of me personally helping you in your business, I'd love to hear from you, right? So fill out this application form. It's just free to apply. You can tell me why. I'll look at all these after this call today. And I saw before the call, we already had about 20 or 30 applications. But if you fill this out, I and my team will go through and just see what's most appropriate for you. And it may not be mentorship with me. It actually may be, more, one of our events or something like that. But if I think it is something with me, whether it's the Crystal Circle Entrepreneur Mastermind, I'll personally get back in contact with you, and I'll let you know. I'll tell you what I think is the best thing for you, because the most important thing for me is to make sure that everyone who's taking the time to be on this call is given the direction to go where you need to get to, especially when you hear these next two waves. You're going to see why this is so important, that each of us don't follow the same as everyone else, but we actually follow our own unique path. Super duper important. So if that sounds like something that you want to get some personal advice on, then just fill that out and we'll do our best to serve you. And if it turns out that you should be someone that should be mentored directly with me, you'll hear from me on that as well. And we'll see if there's a good fit there. Let me actually come back to the slides, because I'm about to jump into the second wave. And you'll see here on my slides here, that not only do we have all this information, we have got a summary of the first wave. So what I've said here on wave one is that all these different trends, the growth of entrepreneurship, the third wave, the social media, online everywhere, the impact of this is a different way of thinking. Our ability, your ability to create and collaborate in real time is transforming at an exponential rate. You may not even have a great idea for a business today, and off a call like this, you meet someone in the comments that's got a great business you like the idea of, you connect with them, and boom, within a day, you're already working out a way for you to be in partnership with each other. That's how quickly things can happen today, provided you're willing to take action. But it all comes down to choosing the right mission, because today, if you've got a big mission, you'll find the right people will come and work with you. No one's out there looking to just make money anymore. Everyone's looking for a meaningful way to be able to go out there and deliver value. Find the latest models to get you there. So I mentioned some of those models earlier up. I do this all the time, looking at the very latest models from around the world. And economies of speed beat economies of scale, which means we're no longer in the industrial age where you need to go out and build something big. You can start by just testing and measuring something small, and then when you know it works, then you can scale it. So it's all about speed and your pace of speed as well. In terms of where you get information from, I will keep on sharing with you on my Facebook page and also on Twitter, all of this information. So if you're following me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter as well. And every couple of weeks, I will post a new video. And this video here, what's your biggest question? I did a Q&A. So I'll be doing that fairly regularly as well. These are all things which I just do for free, because I really, really believe that in the future, it's going to be the entrepreneurs that make the biggest difference out there. So do make the most of that. And like I mentioned, we've got the entrepreneur mentoring. So if that's something where you actually want more direction, I'm more than happy to help there as well. Now, why am I going into so much effort to help you personally? It's because I'm really seeing the second wave, which no one yet is doing at the pace they're going to do it. Me 3.0 is this idea that you in the future will be designing a business for a market of one. Seriously, it means that every single person that comes into your business has got a very, very different experience. By the way, Facebook is already doing this. Instagram already does this. When you go to Facebook, you don't get to see Facebook, you get to see your Facebook. When you go to Instagram, you don't see Instagram, you get to see your Instagram. When you go to Snapchat, you get to see your Snapchat. So they've already designed through their platform a market of one, which is you. And so what you get is different from everyone else. So this is what happens when the age of millennials, where we're all focused at ourselves, the growth of personalization, where it's easier now than ever to personalize, cognitive computing, which I will talk more about, but it's about an artificial intelligence which allows us to personalize at a different rate, rising global choice, which means even if you're not doing this, your customer is going to expect that you will, or else they'll go to someone else and choose someone else that's doing this, and our own customer expectations and the rise of the third wave, they all combine together to create an entirely new reality. So I call this Humanism 3.0. We are only just seeing the beginning of it, and I'm going to share with you the difference in this new wave that's coming in the next 10 years of what you can expect to see compared to what we're seeing at the moment with the likes of companies like Amazon or Google that are really at the forefront of personalization today. The first time this happened, by the way, was way, way, way back. If you go right back into ancient Rome, back in 600 BC, this was a time when someone called Vitruvius came along and said, the measure of the universe is the man. He basically said that man is the microcosm of the macrocosm. If we start by measuring ourselves, we can understand everything. And it was actually the Vitruvian Man, which was about the same Vitruvius that was actually created by Da Vinci, which became, by Michelangelo, which became so well known because the whole of the design of it was designed for the book, which was all about Vitruvius as well. Sorry, it wasn't Michelangelo, it was one of them. I can't remember which one. But by the way, this one here isn't by either of them. This one is obviously by Homer Simpson. And it's all about the fact that even today, while we have different interests, we still see the center of everything as ourselves, which is why we have the selfie generation. And why is that important? Because if you're not giving that personalized pathway for your customers, then they'll actually create their own pathway. So you might have seen me post this before. User experience will go wherever the user wants it to go, regardless of what you design. And if you design something that doesn't fit them, you'll know it straight away because they just simply won't buy from you. So this is about creating a market of one, and it's about creating it at the highest level. We can do this now because the first wave of artificial intelligence was calculation. And calculation was really like punch cards. It was using your computer as a glorified calculator. That then moved to coding, which is where we could then tell the computer what to do, but it was still static. So if you have a website today and someone's going to that website and it's the same website they would have seen yesterday, then you're still at phase 2. And by the way, if you think how many websites did you bother going to today which were the same as what they looked like yesterday, I guarantee you it's less than 1%. If anything, it might have been your own website, but you simply don't go to those websites anymore. You might go to a news site, you might go to a social media site, you might go to a photo sharing site, but wherever you're going, it's new information, it's new variety. It isn't the same old thing you're looking at again and again, which means if you've got a website where nothing's changing, you've already become redundant and no one's really looking at your site or interested in it. The third stage, cognitive, is when you're actually creating algorithms or creating rules for the computer to decide what it is that each customer gets to see, and each customer gets a personalized pathway. Now, here's the interesting thing about this. You don't need to do all this yourself. What's happening, like for example, when my book came out, Millionaire Master Plan, it became a New York Times bestseller. I could put it onto Amazon. Amazon decides if I am going to buy this book, what else it will recommend for me based on other people who bought that book. So I didn't need to figure all that out. I just need to use Amazon, right? So you can use other platforms to do this. However, there's a challenge with all of that. And the challenge with all of this is that this is all backward-facing AI. Backward-facing AI is where you are treating your habits as the best way to choose what to do next. And that's not a good way to grow and evolve as a human being, which is why a lot of us get tired of what we see on Facebook without realizing it's simply the things we were looking at a year ago before we evolved ourselves. And so Facebook is just saying, well, you were looking at those things, so we're just giving you more of the same. If you want to change your habits, going to social media, which is looking backwards, will not help. If you're reading books that aren't actually helping you to expand, then going and looking at what you're reading yesterday isn't going to recommend the best things for you to transform tomorrow. And we all know that the biggest shift in transformation happens, and the biggest key to education is to do things differently from what you were doing and to do the things you didn't even know you should be doing. So this is where we've actually launched GeniusU, and I'm giving you this as an example of forward-looking AI, because you can use GeniusU for free. We've designed it deliberately for the next 10 years. And the whole idea of this is that with so much information out there, having a personalized assessment-based place where people can say, well, here's my passions, which you can do for free, the passion test. Here's my genius, which again is for free. Here's the way that I can go about, creating a pathway for myself based on the level I'm at, my wealth dynamics profile. These are all things which allow you to do that and then connect with others as well. So this is much more about actually looking forward-facing, as it says here. Our assessment algorithms provide us with intelligent data on users' interest levels, social connections, and while most AI is backward-facing, focused at past habits, GeniusU's AI is forward-facing based on where users want to go and the best steps to get there. You'll see more and more and more of these more platforms show up, and you can do this for yourself. How do you already today find out what your customers really want? You could already just send an email with a survey which says, hey, in this next year, I'd really love to serve you better. Out of these different options, what would you be most interested in? So I can really make sure that I'm making the most of your time and I'm delivering to you what you want. And you'd be amazed how many people come back to you. And of course, they're the first people you should connect with as well. In exactly the same way, for anyone who actually is interested in mentoring with me, I'm not going to get back to everybody. I'm just going to get back to those who are actually interested, which means I'm making the most of my time and I'm serving others in such ways, making the most of their time as well. So this is a two-way conversation now where you're looking deliberately for each person to see how can you serve them best. There'll be platforms like GeniusU and others that you can use for your own business. This is an example of what we've done. And believe me, this is a wave, right? We only launched this a year and a half ago. And within a year and a half, we're already on track to have over 1.2 million people on the platform by the end of this year. We're already in over 190 countries. We're already in 70 different languages that should be 7 different languages that people are actually sharing. And we're already hitting the $500,000 user mark, which we'll be at within the next 2 months. All this is happening as a result of people telling people there's a better way to do things. And we're at a point now where you as a startup founder, me even as a startup entrepreneur, we have more power to change the world than any large company out there, right? We're actually seeing that shift take place because we've got all these tools that we didn't have before. And it isn't about economies of scale, it's about economies of speed. So this here is a summary of the second wave. You have to be focusing at your company delivering to a market of one. The trends of all these together means that we now have a different focus, which is not your products. Your business doesn't start when you have a product. Your business starts when you have a customer. And it's when your customers can easily find the #1 solution to their challenges and desires from you by them actually sharing with you what they want and then getting what they want, or sharing with you where they want to go and you giving them direction on the best way to get there because they didn't know that way before. Start with your customer, not your products. Plan for personalized paths for your customers today and know that that's what you're going to need to do rather than trying to get a product that's one size fits all, and design your business to serve a customer of one. You can already go out and start looking at the other companies out there that are doing this well, and you can start working with those companies. You can partner with them as well. And this is really about knowing that the old model where you had to create a product because you needed to create a factory first, you needed to have the money to have the product first, that whole model is gone. And you can already, with nothing more than your time, go find a customer and already share and have a chat with them about where they're at as well. Okay, so with that being shared, because the third wave is the biggest one of all, but I've just shared 2 things which today you might say, that can wait until tomorrow. What I want you to think about is just in the same way that when we actually saw within a year of the iPhone coming out, all the smartphones came out everywhere. Within a year of virtual reality starting, we're all going to be in virtual worlds. It's going to happen faster than you can imagine. And if you already have a customer that loves you because you're solving their problem, they'll stay with you even if they start going onto virtual worlds and new platforms and they're no longer on Facebook and they're no longer, using Google search. However, if you don't have that customer because you aren't looking after their best interest, it's not going to be about your product. Your product will absolutely be redundant. And at that point, you'll have a really difficult time looking for new customers coming your way. So be really, really clear that this is not something which is a nice to have. This is a must have. Things are going to shift very, very quickly. And the key to this is for you to just say, hey, that happened back 10 years ago in 2006. It's going to happen again. As long as I'm willing to accept that, then I'm going to be a lot more hungry to change as opposed to be in a comfort zone at the moment until that comfort gets taken away. Remember, Kodak was still in business 10 years ago. All right, so let's come over and just share one more time what we're seeing at the moment on the page so I can get a bit of a sense of who's sharing what at the moment. So you can see here, I'm back on my Facebook page. I'll do a little refresh here. There's been a lot of comments that have been posting on here at the moment. So I'm just gonna go back to my, and like I said, for those who are a little later, you can see what happens. If I click on just who's sharing, right? I get all the people who are on the call right now. And you can see here all the people that you can actually connect up with. That would be people that also are just hearing what you're hearing and clearly know that they're not going to actually get to their success on their own. So do make the most of the connections that are here, because we've got amazing people from around the world that are on here. Here's Chandresh from London. Hi, Chandresh. We've got Shirley Ann here. So check out all my old books apart from the Millionaire Master Plan. Don't throw them out. Share them with others, right? That's the key. Right, here's Karen from Brisbane, and she's running EduWebinar. Oh, next one I want to talk about is education, so that's a big one coming. Here's Tessie, certified interior designer. This is great. She's actually put her website down as well from Singapore. Here's Marus, creator, looking for a supporter and accumulator. So if you're looking for people, you can actually share that here as well, and you'll find the right people. Here's Shabeta, greetings from Hong Kong. Yeah, look forward to seeing you at Rise. That's going to be really awesome. Here's Miriam, as you speak, Roger, President Obama is here paying official visit to Vietnam. Give my regards to Obama. And here's Mariana from Melbourne, Gary from Southampton. So as you can see, many people from around the world all sharing their experiences, and many of you actually sharing your notes here as well, which is great. So I will come back to the top ones afterwards as I get to questions, because I'm going to go to my final wave here. And this is where it gets really, really interesting, because the biggest challenge that we've had, and let me just kind of unshare my screen for a moment. The biggest challenge we have links to the reason I became an entrepreneur, which is right back when I was studying at Cambridge University, and I was studying actually to be an architect. And one of the people that I studied was someone called Buckminster Fuller. And Buckminster Fuller wasn't just an architect, he was an entrepreneur, he was also a futurist, and he had this concept called the final exam. And what he said way back in the 1970s is he said already we are in a position where technology can solve all the world's problems. And the reason he said that was because he said all the world's problems are actually distribution problems. So for example, education. It's not like we don't have enough knowledge or enough teachers. We just haven't distributed it easily or well, which is why we still have people who are illiterate or people who can't go to school. Healthcare. It's not like we don't have enough healthcare. Food. It's not like we don't have enough food, but it's not distributed effectively. So people are still in poverty. They're still without healthcare. They're still in a position where they can't eat or drink clean water. So what he said was technology solves all those problems, so why aren't they solved? And he said the reason they're not solved is because of human consciousness. And he called this final exam the final exam because he said we're seeing technology continue to accelerate. Remember, 1970s, there was no internet, there was no mobile phones, nothing. And he said at that point, there was already enough technology to resolve things, but we're accelerating at this rate where we better start accelerating human consciousness as well. Because if we don't, what's going to happen is technology will continue to exceed until it destroys humanity. That's why he calls it the final exam. We won't pass it. It won't be any more exams after that. However, if we do accelerate human consciousness so that it actually catches up and is able to harness that technology, then we do have a very, very different world, because we'll have a world where we actually are able to then solve all our problems and we pass the exam. Now, by the way, this is already happening. You can go look at people like Elon Musk. You can look at people like Mark Zuckerberg. These are people who don't have to be going out looking to help the world. They've got more than enough money to retire and sit on an island. But what they're doing instead is they're saying, well, I've got a consciousness, which is that someone's got to fix this. I want to actually be one of the people fixing it. But the challenge is, if only a small number of people do that, harness the wealth and use the wealth, then you end up with this wealth gap, because everyone else doesn't yet have that consciousness or knowledge, and so they get left behind. So we're seeing a very, very big shift happening in the next 10 years, which is the good news, but it also is one where you're involved as much as I am, which is this third wave. So let me share the third wave with you, and then you can see, by just imagining a little bit, the fact that there is the shift that's taking place, you can see for yourself what part you might have to play within this as well. All right, and I'd love your comments as we go. We're in the last 15 minutes here, so as we go through this, yes, I'll look at a couple of questions, but I also love to look at your comments. Whatever's the biggest thing coming out of these different ways for you, and the biggest thing that you see as something that you can actually use, you can post them down there in the comments as well. First of all, any doubt that there isn't a massive change going on? This is here from 2007, which was the year after 2006, when there was no video uploads, pretty much all the way through to where we are today, where there's over 100 uploads per minute, video hours per minute in 2013. By the way, this is over now, something like about 500 to 600 per minute. So we're actually a lot higher than this right now in 2016. Video views per day, 2014, 15, you can see how much that's grown. And then now virtual reality is going through the same pace of growth. Here we are in 2016, by the end of this year, virtual reality doubling up again, doubling up again. So we're not going to be looking at a Facebook wall, we're going to be looking at a Facebook room. The Internet of Things is also growing, so sensors are growing at a massive rate. And like I mentioned earlier, US jobs and jobs all around the world, there's enough studies out there that if you need any convincing, we're seeing between 40 to 50% of all jobs disappearing, which means jobs is not an option in the future for our kids. And some people believe this is the kind of world we're going to see, where we're all going to be sticking these headsets on. I would be very surprised in 5 years' time if anyone is using headsets like this. I think this is like the same when we looked at mobile phones, when there were these big things that look just the same size as this, whereas now we basically have mobile phones which are far smaller and ways of connecting with each other which are quite seamless. We'll see the same things with virtual reality happening in the way we access virtual reality through glasses or through contact lenses. So we're not going to have these massive big headsets on. And we're going to see a very different world, in my view. It's going to be a world that actually isn't going to be where we shut ourselves from each other, but we actually become more connected. I talked to you about the final exam. This is the quote Buckminster Fuller actually shared. Humanity is taking its final exam. We've come to an extraordinary moment when it doesn't have to be you or me anymore. There is enough for all. So this is wave 3, something called learning networks. And for me, this is the bright light in the waves that I'm going to be sharing. And you're actually part of a learning network right now. The way we're even conducting this hour, where you're getting to connect with each other, you're connecting with my knowledge and the knowledge that I have from learning from others. We're all around the world, and we're actually having this happen in real time. But we're going to take it one step further, because this is what happens when you actually bring consciousness and allow consciousness to accelerate upon itself. And this happens because of what's just happened in the last 10 years, which has been the age of social media. And I would say the next 10 years is the age of social learning, which is quite different. And I'm going to share why that is. Take these 4 different slides. The difference of a social network compared to a learning network. 2006 was when we all were living in social hierarchies. Everything was in social classes, everything was incremental action. Even the businesses we ran could only be as strong as the person above us who was telling us what to do. So this is all about actions based on hierarchy, given a single direction. So we didn't have any problem not knowing what direction to take. When you're in a job, you're told what to do, right? Today, entrepreneurs have a bigger challenge because they're not told what to do anymore. So we're saying, what do I do next? So social hierarchy is when we're saying, what do I do? Social hierarchy moved into social networks, which was an entirely new thing. And suddenly we went from incremental actions to exponential actions. That's when we heard concepts like viral, where suddenly one idea and one person with a clever little video or one person with a great little product could get that product out everywhere in the world. Today, we're all used to that, whereas 10 years ago, we would have thought that was impossible. Social networks have actually transformed governments. And it's not as a result of this direction, it's as a result of shared discovery, which means that you're not going to Facebook to say, what do I do? You're going to Facebook to see what you can discover, and then you're actually passing it on to others as well. Now, as far as social goes, going from one to many to many to many, that's great as far as the conversation goes, but the challenge at the end of it is 2 things. The first one is everyone's in conversation almost too much. And the second thing is nothing actually happens, right? Yes, everyone shares information, but you can get distracted, and so you're in distraction as opposed to action. So we're now seeing this massive shift taking place, and I'm really at the forefront of this because I'm working with a lot of people in the learning field, and I can tell you the same thing is now happening at the next level up. Here's the next level up. We have now taken the idea of social networks and the idea of crowdsourcing, and we've tried to get it started in online learning, but we've done it a little bit in the same way as the way the social network started, where you kind of like had like hierarchies like LinkedIn had when they started, instead of everyone being able to connect with everyone. So learning hierarchies is something like a MOOC. It's something like a online course on Udemy. It's something where, yes, it's online, so that's exciting, but you're still only getting taught by one teacher, which is just like a social hierarchy. You're being told by one person, by one boss. So when you sit through a learning hierarchy or learning class, just like being in a social class, you can see why over 95% of people sitting through that online class don't even finish it, because it's a really boring way to learn. And this has been the way that we've been actually working in the past. And even this call right now, even though I'm doing my best to actually make this engaging, I can tell you, it's only so many people that can actually listen through to an hour of one person sharing, right? So I'm still, at the moment, coming to you as a learning hierarchy, which is like, let me share you some things with you. This is still incremental learning. You can only really learn as much as I'm able to teach. But we're about to move from learning hierarchies to learning networks. A learning network is when we're actually progressing now, not sharing and taking actions, but progressing through shared discovery. There's some great examples of this. Let's take, for example, crowdfunding. Indiegogo, Kickstarter. We just ran a Indiegogo campaign for my son, Luke. He was 16 years old. He raised $43,000 for his school project. And he did it by us going in and seeing what was already working for other people. We learned from other people's experiences. We learned from other people sharing their experiences as well. And off the back of that, we could then do better than we could have done on our own, and even better than what they could do as well, which is why the number of people now learning how to raise funds online is growing exponentially. You can take something like extreme sports, whether it is skiing or whether it is base jumping or even just something as simple as bike riding. People who are sharing their tricks with each other, immediately everyone can see that around the world using YouTube or using the Red Bull channel, and straight away from that, they then all can go out and do the same thing. So we're seeing an exponential growth in the way that people are being able to go out there and do amazing stunts, amazing tricks. And this is happening in all different areas, but at the moment, still using social networks. So for example, on YouTube, for example, on Facebook, we're doing our best to try and share information, but it's not yet happening in the most effective way. Think about this in your own industry. Think about this in your own country. If you had a learning network where you could actually curate and share what was going to work best, so that rather than you just hearing me tell you what to do, you actually knew what was the best next thing to do yourself, that suddenly transforms everything. And we're going to see this across the board. Good example of this is that when I was at Necker Island last year, here's myself, Richard Branson, a series of other founders of large networks around the world. And this is a really good example of where we got together and said, what could we do differently to work together towards something? And we actually came up with the idea of an entrepreneur apprentice program, where instead of just teaching kids that they could go and get a job or they can go into university after school, let's give them a chance to learn through doing by pairing them up with an apprentice somewhere in the world or an entrepreneur somewhere in the world. And we're using Genius U, and we're launching this in the next 3 months. So if you happen to be someone that doesn't yet know how to start a business, you'll be able to find a company on Genius U that's saying, I'd like to take an apprentice on to help grow the entrepreneur movement. And off the back of that, you then get to learn from them, and you're giving up your time. You'll be either paid money for it or you have earning opportunity off the back of it, but you'll be learning as you go as well. And the same thing is happening right now with the United Nations Millennium Goals, where we're actually organizing and designing something called the Purpose Test, where you can find out what your purpose is. It might be education, it might be the environment. And once you know what your purpose is, you can then connect up with others that have a similar purpose to say, well, if it's health, what are other people learning about the best ways to build a business around health? What are other people learning about the best technologies and tools to work together on health? And you then actually have a way to not sift through Facebook to try and find the right page or the right post or the right group to join. You will be able to move this directly into an industry-specific or purpose-specific area where you're actually every day getting that feed of the very, very latest things to be learning as you go as well. So learning networks will transform learning hierarchies in the same way that social networks have transformed social hierarchies. And we're going to see this happen in the next 10 years. And the big shift is this will mean that we'll see the development of our consciousness to actually do things grow as rapidly as our ability to share things over the last 10 years. And we're all going to learn at an accelerated rate as a result of this as well. It's going to transform our education system. It's going to transform our governments. It's going to transform our own ability to be able to learn at an accelerated speed. And it's happening in certain areas as well already. Like, for example, solar power, where this year we're getting in the US, most of the different states already are hitting solar grid parity, which means it's cheaper to draw power from the solar grid than it is from the oil grid. This is already happening where the likes of Warren Buffett is also investing in wind farms and solar. It's happening where Elon Musk is doing the same. And it's going to be 80% of the world by next year. 2017 is the year when everything changes. So that's the good news I wanted to share with you. I'm super excited about this time because we're living in a world where we are actually seeing ourselves being the wave, ourselves accelerating our own consciousness because technology is allowing us to accelerate humanity, and that we're doing it in a way that we can actually give each of us a personalized experience, which means our own ability to empower ourselves as well as those around us is going to transform like never before in the next 10 years. Now, what I want to share, I'm going to come back and actually finish the last 5 years on questions, but I want to share what I said at the beginning, which was to come back to these posts here. So whatever's the biggest thing you've got from this call, post it down in the comments. I'm going to go back and I'll make comments tonight when I go through all of this. I'll I'll see who's been on this call. And so if you've been quiet at this point, you haven't been sharing anything on the Facebook comments, go ahead and post something now, so at least I know you've been on this call. I know we had over 3,000 people actually who listened in, and generally 80–90% of people stay quiet. Make this the time when you actually go and just take an action, have the courage, and just post something. So this is what I said at the beginning of the call if you missed it. I said in 2006, anyone who was an expert would have told you the wave to ride, which was already too late to ride it, is have a search optimized website, collect an email list, post on a blog, and sell digital products. But it was already too late to do those things, and all the best guys didn't do that. They were doing something quite different. They weren't going for search optimized websites, they were going for a mobile site with apps. So they were the first to take off, and that's where you have all these billion-dollar companies today. They weren't bothered about collecting the email list as much. They were focused more at building an engaged on community. That might mean they have your email, like Facebook's got my email, but they don't send me emails every day. And instead of posting on a blog, they shared videos and content on social media, and that's why we have all our YouTubers today. And instead of selling digital products, they gave away their content for free, and they sold experiences instead. So what am I going to tell you to do based on the 3 different waves that we just went through? Here it is. By 2026, if you come back to this in 10 years' time, or even 5 years' time, you'll find the most successful people are not the ones focusing at mobile sites and apps. They're the ones who have a fully mobilized movement, right? We are part of the entrepreneur movement, and it doesn't matter if we all get onto virtual reality, if we're all using augmented reality, we'll move there with our movement. So what's your movement? Is it health? Is it environment? What is your purpose-driven movement? And where are you all showing up? And show up there and know that it's not about having to own an asset. It's not having to stay in one place. It's being mobile and moving to wherever that movement goes. And that's a very, very different set of tools and skills to be able to build that. And I'll be talking about that with those of you who actually become part of the entrepreneur network that we have, whether it's through my mentoring or whether it's through my events. Build an active learning network. I've just talked about that. It's not about just having a community where people talk to each other. It's having a learning network where everyone is actually learning from each other and contributing into the learning to help each other to grow as well. And I'm super excited about that for entrepreneurship, because it means I'll be learning as much from you and the things you're learning through the network that we're growing than we would by just basically you learning from me on this call. And finally, or next thing, instead of sharing video and content, sharing customer stories and insight. This is not about what content you want to share. It's about the stories that your customers have. And we already do that within our Entrepreneur Institute. Every single week, we're sharing the customer stories, and we're sharing them out to the rest of the world as well. It's a very, very different focus, where we're not focusing at ourselves. We're focusing at the customer. We're not focusing at what story should we tell. We're focusing at what stories are our customers telling. And then finally, instead of giving away content and selling experiences, give away everything, including your experiences. But charge for the connection, which is intimacy, which is your time is the most valuable thing you're going to have in the future. This is when authors will actually have a book of one. This is when artists will have one picture they sell during the year, and that's good enough for them. We're going back to the time of the Renaissance. This is when you actually had Da Vinci, Michelangelo, with patrons paying for them to create amazing works of art, amazing masterpieces, and that's what people then really saw in the value. So we're now in the second true Renaissance, and the real question is, what's your masterpiece? What's your legacy? And how are you going to make sure that you are also aware that you have already got enough you can give away for free. And then it's not about your best content for free or your best experience for free. It's your best connection for free, and how you ensure that that happens. So for anyone who hasn't yet actually, if you would like to either come along for our events, or if you'd like to actually apply for any of the mentoring that we do, I'd love to hear from you. And I'll give you feedback, even if I don't think I can help you in the mentoring right now, on what the best pathway is for you to do. Like I mentioned, in terms of where you can go, here is where you can go. I'll just share my screen. I'm going to come to final couple of questions here. This here is my screen on Facebook, so I'll just update that. And on the webinar screen, which many of you are on watching this video, you'll see we've got 178 comments here. So thank you everyone who's been commenting. And then at the same time, down below, I know a lot of you have been filling this out already. This tells you why I do what I do, which is all about a market of one, right? It's like, how can I help you personally? And if you submit this because you're interested in whether or not you should be getting mentored by me or not, whether or not I can help you, whether or not you fit into our mentoring group, I'll make sure I point you to the right direction. And if it turns out that I think I would love to have a chance to mentor you, and I think you could get great value from our group and vice versa, then I'll personally get in contact with you as well. And I know from that we'll have some amazing people we'll be working with in the coming months as well. And so with that being shared, let me come over now to these comments. Here we go. Here is the posts. We've got 184 people that have actually taken the time to come to my page and post. For those who haven't clicked the like and done this, do it straight after this course so you're still on here as well. We've got 48 shares, so 48 of you have actually got this on your wall now, which is great, and you can use that as well. And I'm going to just shift this to most recent. I think we're on that already. So we've got Nikki here saying, wow, thank you for all the info. This has really terrified me on an aspect, but also reassured me other. That's good. We've got Shaf here, yes, we need to shake up education for sure, which is great. So there's a comment going on that. We've got LaRue here from South Africa, owner of a sports management company. Excellent talk. Thank you, LaRue. Good for you to be on here. Karen Lynn, excited about being part of a learning network. This for me is going to be something which, when I explain to people first time, they go, I think I get the concept, I'm not sure. It's a bit like me trying to explain YouTube to you or Facebook to you when you've never seen it before. You'll know it when you see it. And when you see it, you're going to go, that was what Roger was talking about. This is so much more than just a conversation. We're actually learning at an accelerated rate through this. And know that those of you who decide to set up a learning network, that's going to transform everything as well. We've got Prince here, blown away by the idea that a business starts with the first customer. Even better, the customer co-creates the product as they use it. And we've got Jung here, everything's about to change. Absolutely. And you're a millennial, which is awesome. So really good to hear from you. We've got Luzul from the Philippines. So it's good to have you on board. Allison has goosebumps. Sharon, so some really cool posts here. I really enjoy reading all your posts, by the way, because for me, it's about our journey together, right? Like entrepreneurship is one of the most lonely things if you're trying to do it on your own. But when you're working with each other, it just makes a huge difference. So I'm going to finish with just one question. Dickie's asked a question here, right? So Roger, great webinar. So here's my question. If your webinar today was you teaching to many, how would it look in a learning network? Are you saying people like you won't be doing the lectures anymore? Nope, it won't be like that. I'll tell you exactly how it will work. Imagine a world where you're not actually watching this on a screen. Imagine a world where you've actually put on your little goggles or your contact lenses, and we're now in a virtual world. Imagine in that virtual world, we're all there together, and when we ask a question, it isn't like us all putting our hands up, but we're asking a question, and everyone immediately is able to go, that's a really good question. I like that question. And in real time, you can have 50 people asking a question, people watching those questions, them getting voted up, and within 5 seconds, the best question is the one that pops up at the top that anyone can then answer. And when it gets popped up to the top, when everyone's looking at that question, the person who is already the best qualified to answer that question, which often won't be me, will already be picked out by artificial intelligence because AI already knows all the people in the network. And so you might ask a question like, well, you know, what's the best way to start in the right country? Others will say, I think that's a really good question. That moves up right to the top, and there's someone in the room who's actually set up in about 5 or 6 different countries, and that question pops up right in front of them in the virtual reality, and they go, oh, I can answer that question. And you get an insight from the right person that no one else would have actually known to get before, because we weren't all exponentially connected up in a way that actually allows the right information from the right person in the right way to actually find its way to the top. Think about that kind of a world where whenever you have a question or a need, you don't just post something on Facebook hoping someone will see it. It actually gets escalated up to the right person in the right way who can actually directly help you. And then you're getting the right answer in the right way as well. And then everyone is having their time of true value, not just the one asking the question, but the ones being asked aren't asked all the wrong questions, they're asking the ones they can actually help with. We'll go more into that in the Fast Forward events that I'm going to be running. But we do that at the Fast Forward event as well. We get everyone having a chance to share what their opportunities are. We get people to stand up and share and immediately find the 20 people in the room who are the right people for them to connect with. And the accelerated progress you make when you're in that kind of self-curating, self-organizing environments is really amazing. It allows us to not be left behind with technology, but realize technology is actually what allows us to move ahead. So with that being shared, final thing I want to share, guys, is look out for the purpose test. It's coming, it's free. It allows you to actually find out exactly what your purpose is, and then allows you to align with others. That again is another example of a learning network where you don't have to listen to everything. You just have to listen to the people that actually are aligned to your purpose and then learn from them as well. That's the idea behind it. We're going to leave that page open, which is the page where you're currently watching the video. So you can go and actually apply down there, but within about 24 hours, we'll kind of stop it so we're not kind of like getting applications in a week from now. And we'll definitely make sure we promise to get back to everyone who's on there as well. And for everyone who's been posting, I'll get back to all of you as I go through those comments tonight. Really, thank you very, very much for everyone who's been on this call, who's contributed to this call as well. This has been a very fast-paced and quick hour, packed with information. So if you missed it and you're watching the video, I hope you really enjoyed it as well. And we will be catching up with you on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. And hopefully, if you like this webinar, you can post your comments to say, if you'd like to see more. And if we get enough comments that this is a format that you enjoyed, then we'll see what we can set up for the future as well. Have a fantastic couple of months ahead. Hopefully I'll see you in one of our events coming up as well, and continue to do awesome stuff, make magic, and we'll catch up for you later. All right, bye.